like I said, I'm going to spend about maybe 60 seconds on the dashboards. But what I want to get to is the why we're doing these dashboards. And for us, it really starts for the business impact, right? So if you're in a services-based business, if you've got people out in the field, you've got people in a contact center, every time they're interacting with somebody, they've got a process they follow. And you've got those processes and technologies that are built around data that's flowing through your business. And what we found, I've worked with several different survey companies and CX companies. What we found is, and this is probably no surprise to anybody else, but better process, when you take better process and better data, you get better business outcomes, right? So I worked with a company called Ask Nicely for a little bit, and they're a survey business. And what they do is they'll send out NPS surveys. And what these NPS what their shtick was, and what they did differently was they took these NPS surveys, and instead of sending them back to a bureaucrat that was going to analyze everything in the business, they got the details and the results from those surveys all the way down to the people that actually delivered the service. Okay, and I want to show you some of the impact here. So if you think about your typical voice of the customer process, does anybody run voice of the customer for their business? Going out, getting surveys, analyzing stuff? Okay, so certainly CEOs are involved, right? So you get that initial interaction with the business. You send a survey out, somebody responds. This process takes a week from the initial interaction to getting somebody to respond to a survey. Then somebody goes in and they crunch the numbers, they load it into a database, they load it into a spreadsheet, they do a bunch of pivot tables. Somebody builds a report. Then it goes to a manager for review.
Is this opt-in or is it a surprise receipt of the survey?
This will be opt-in, right? So, good example for the types of businesses that we worked with at Ask Nicely were you had somebody come out to spray your house for bugs, right? At the end of every interaction, you'd get a survey. You go to a doctor's office after your visit at the doctor's office, you get a survey, right? It's those types of surveys. But every month, you've got a team that's going through crunching all of this data, and then they identify 3 things. They throw it up on a Pareto chart. They identify a few things. They create a plan on how they're going to address it. Then it goes to executive review. That's another month. And then eventually, maybe you start training and coaching people, right? And that takes weeks. So we've gone from that initial customer interaction to 3 months later, having some kind of potential impact on what people are doing downstream to fix potential issues that showed up 3 months earlier, right? There you go. So what we did at Ask Nicely was we actually took those interactions, and as soon as you were done with the interaction, we skipped all the way through the survey and response. This was all completely automated. Went through the analyze, report, analyze and report phase, and we did that all within our systems. And we got that out to the manager, but at the same time, we got that information directly out to the technician, to the physician, to the front desk person who interacted with that customer, so that they could actually see the feedback from the customer. And then we also got that out to the executive, right? So we took this 3-month process, and we were now doing this daily. Every day, you'd come into the office, and you'd see what worked yesterday, what didn't work yesterday, a comparison between how you're doing and how the rest of the business, other people in the business are doing, to create a daily impact. Okay? And what's really, really important here when we think about disrupting this process is the impact that it had on the business. So we would see that the typical business would get a 30 to 40 point bump in their NPS score just by shortcutting that piece and getting the information directly to the people that are delivering service. Didn't have to train the managers, didn't have to change process, didn't have to do anything special. We just let people know what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. We had another business, went from a 31 NPS to 68 NPS. Does anybody know the average NPS score for the telco
Ooh, it's negative?
industry? Yeah. I took a picture 2 years ago at MWC, and I think it was in the NPS, Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score? Yeah, actually, I guess I should ask. Who knows NPS? Okay. All right. So I think it was 11. 11 was the average NPS score 2 years ago at MWC.
Cable.
Well, there's something, yeah. And we also saw a 7x increase in referrals, right? So when people are happier, people are talking about your business, has a direct impact on people coming into your business. Not only this on the reputation side, but we also saw on the operations side that the companies that were doing this right saw a multiplier on their investments in revenue, operations, customer satisfaction. Okay, so the companies that were doing this right, when they had operations projects that we're doing, they did 60% better than the companies that weren't doing it right in terms of ROI. 64% better on revenue projects, and 133% better on customer satisfaction projects, right? So this is just changing that process a little bit, doing stuff that we can do with technology today and doing it better. So that's one part of the puzzle. The other part is improving the data. So I want to ask, is this really a voice of the customer project or a voice of the customer solution? So you've got your customer base. If you're surveying people every time you deliver service, how many of your customers are you actually interacting with through those surveys every month, right? A portion of them. You send out a post-service survey, you lose some of them because of contact information, and then you get the surveys back, right? So best in class for us was we'd get a 20% response rate on surveys. Industry average is 10 to 12%, right? So, and then you scrub the data. So we've gone from talking about a voice of the customer initiative and a voice of the customer program where we think we're representing 100% of our customers, but we're actually only talking about 3-4% of our customers, right? So it's hard to say that that's a voice of the customer program. So what we're really excited about with vCons is we get to start adding stuff back in, right? So we've got the survey data, and we're actually working, I've actually reached back out to S and I said we're gonna start pulling their survey responses in as vCons. But we're also adding in social media, digital interactions, right? Every comment on social media, every interaction through instant messaging and things like that can become vCons. All of our contact center interactions, all of our service interactions, right? You get people out in the field that are interacting and delivering service to your customers. We're working with another company that actually, I don't know all the states that this is allowed in, but in Colorado, you're allowed to record interactions at the door, right? So if you've got somebody interacting with the customer, they've got a recording device on them, you can pull that information in and provide that back, right? You think about doctors as they're talking with patients, over the phone nurses and things like that. These are all pieces that can be pulled into vCons. And then you get your sales interactions. And now we've gone from this voice of the customer program that's a survey that's showing us 3% of our customers to where we're getting back closer to an actual representation of our entire customer base. And then we get it to the rest of the business. So at Ask Nicely and all of these other companies like a Medallia or a Qualtrics, you look at a call miner, all these guys that are focused on the call center or specific areas of the business. You're taking a limited amount of data, getting it to your C-suite, and you're getting it to your service business. Right? But with vCons and the ability to dispense that, get that data out to every area of the business, and we'll show you some of the dashboards that we're working on just to do that. Now we can get all of that information out to everybody, right? So I do a lot of management around product and marketing. The first thing I do when I go into a company is I say, tell me everything customers are talking about for us. Why do they like us? Why do they not like us? When I went into IntelliPeer in 2015, I went in, asked our contact center to give me a report, right? It's 2025, I still don't have the report, right? I'm not there anymore, but I never received that report, right? And it's pretty common that you can't get that out of the contact center. You certainly can't get it out of sales. Sales never wants to sell or share their conversations, right? But now with vCons and being able to push that data out to the rest of the business, now we have the ability to really do a true voice of the customer experience. So give you some examples here. So who does voice services, or everybody in here does voice services reporting of some sort, right? We'd like to present back, how many calls did we get? What was the average hold time? How many abandons? All these things. And we serve this up as analytics, but this isn't really analytics when we're thinking about customer experience. This is just how our phone system is doing. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where you've got a CX report where we dump everything out for everybody. So you can see all the information, but does it actually make sense to you, right? Can you imagine coming in every morning and having to wade through all of this data to figure out what's important and what's not important, right? Gary will know this one because we've talked about this quite a bit. But here's another example of somebody that came in with the contact center mentality, vomited up a bunch of metrics on a dashboard and said, here's your analytics, right? And here's another one. I'm not sure what this tells me, but I can tell you this is the last thing I want to look at every morning. But this is... You know what? Yeah, perfect. All right. So this is the world that we're moving from, and we're moving into a world where we can take vCons and we can take social media interactions, we can take contacts interactions, we can take phone calls, text messages coming in through UCaaS and other platforms, and start to crunch them and get them put into specific looks for every area of the business, right? The CEO doesn't want to see the same data that the product person or the marketing person or the contact center manager wants to see, right? So what's really, really cool, and we can, as we're starting to build these things, we can start to take this standard data and spit out these very specific dashboards that everybody can use, and we can quickly iterate on this, right? So we're talking about a few dashboards right now with Clarity Voice and TeleCloud and several other players. But where I see us a couple of years from now is we've got thousands of dashboards, right? We've got a different dashboard for every persona in every different vertical, where everybody sees exactly what they need to see every day, and nothing more, nothing less, right? So here's an example where we've got looking at your typical call data, but also looking at how are you doing against your other locations, one within your network, but also competitively from a social media perspective. What are people talking about? What are the things that translate into staffing issues or that translate into operations issues, right? Because we've got this richness of the data, we now have the ability to tease that out for people that they don't want to think about these things, they just want to know what to do, right? So we don't have to sit here and analyze data for a month or 2 months to come up with a program. It's immediately in front of me every day, right? So lots of awesome ways that we can present this. But another dirty secret about dashboards is that nobody wants to look at dashboards, right? What they actually want is, when I come into the office or when I'm on my way into work in the morning, I actually want to see it in my hand, and I want you to spoon feed it to me every morning, right? Not force me to log into a dashboard. So we have the ability to give those views out via email, via text message, via RCS, so that you don't have to go log into an app. I just know every morning I see exactly what I need to see, right? So we're excited about this piece. I talked earlier about all of the business ideas that are going to turn into $100 million businesses, right? This is just one of those ideas. We see an opportunity for this to turn into huge business, not just for us, but every company that we're working with is another $100 million opportunity just with dashboards. All right, so we're super excited about the vCon piece. If you're interested in what we're doing here or want to talk about partnerships or how we can take the data that you're doing and get this out to your customers, would love to talk. That's it.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Just to throw in a couple of thoughts is, while all of this information that Robert's showing has been, conversational information, because vCons can work with unstructured data, if you happen